one of the things that I've realized in this process is that languages are a lot like they're a lot like just a comparison between a diesel engine and a gas engine. And I have a diesel. It's the first time I've ever owned a diesel. And when you start asking people what do you need to know about a diesel, one of the first things like, just make sure you put the right fuel in it.
Yeah.
You have to put diesel fuel in it. If you put regular gas in it, then it's going to mess it up.
It's going to sputter along.
It's going to sputter along, and
break.
eventually it'll break down, and vice versa with a gas engine.
Mm-hmm.
And that picture, it's really a good analogy. Every analogy breaks down, but on some level, it's a really good picture for the way languages function.
Mm-hmm.
And God did a great job at the Tower of Babel. That's one thing I've really realized.
I love that. When you say that, it's like
he did a great job, and it's one of those deals where we're constantly dealing with communication issues in everyday life, and then let alone 2,000 years gap between when an utterance was spoken and then trying to bring it into a modern language. So, but when you open the hood of a diesel, you see there's a place to put oil. Mm-hmm. There's a place to put the washer fluid, and you see transmission fluid, and things are spinning. Hey, it looks like an engine, right? And you open up the hood of a car, and you're like, oh yeah, this it looks kind of similar. They're both vehicles.
Yeah,
they both are meant to carry somebody somewhere.
Yeah. But there's certain things that you give importance to in one that you may not give as much importance to. For instance, transmission in a diesel, far more important than in a regular gas vehicle.
Totally.
Like you want to treat your transmission in diesel really, really well. Gas, it's like, well, it's transmission.
Totally. So that there's overlap, but there's also distinct things.
Yeah.
Right? And you need to know, with my diesel, I have to let it warm up before it starts.
Mm-hmm.
I never had to do that before, and so so that when I do that, I have a different signal there. It's signaling to me, let it warm up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I've kind of realized with languages is, usually when you're reading something and you're trying to translate something, you're asking several questions. One of the questions is, of course, what does this mean? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What does this mean? Because ultimately, that's
the ultimate goal.
That's what we want to know what this means, because if you know what it means, then on a practical level, how do I live my life? As believers reading the Bible. But there's another question that I'm realizing in the midst of my own research in this area is, what does it do? Well, how does it function? And you realize, wait a minute here, that sometimes Greek, especially on a discourse level, and the discourse level meaning the flow of thought, where emphasis is being placed, how an argument is being made and developed. Each language has its own devices for getting certain tasks accomplished that every language is trying. All languages are trying to accomplish certain tasks of communication, right?
Yeah.
Some languages, they use a diesel engine to do it. Other languages, they use a gas engine to do it, right?
Yep.
And so there's many times where if the only question you're asking is, well, what does this mean? And you're not asking, what does it do? Then what often happens is you'll end up with a mismatch of languages.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're putting the fuel for the gas in the diesel.
You're putting the fuel, and if you put the fuel, the diesel in the gas engine, or vice versa, you might get down the road a little bit, right? You might get somewhere.
The point of what's being said.
But eventually it's going to break down.
Yeah.
And so
you'll lose some of the meaning, basically.
Exactly.